How do you think porn has evolved in the past few decades?
If we're talking 2 decades ago, there was a lot of money in porn. So like you'll see sort of almost like feature film looking kind of big budget porn movies that are like shot like feature films. And then kind of like what happened maybe like mid 2000s was like the bottom kind of fell out of the market because of the rise of free tube sites where content was kind of being hosted for free. And what that meant was the value of like porn kind of went down and the budgets really dropped, and people started producing this kind of more kind of amateur looking naturalistic and they call it sometimes like there's like gonzo, but also just like amateur looking, so like amateur porn sort of became more the like kind of norm, and now I think like it's only just really starting to kind of like get a better variety of like perspectives of like different visual styles, different kind of directors, different sexualities, that kind of thing. It is more varied than like people ever give it credit for. It's just that it's harder to find that variety of stuff, I think, because of the like prevalence of these tube sites which kind of monopolize everyone's porn consumption.
And what is it that you aim to do with your more cinematic approach to porn?
I think that the creative potential of porn's not really been explored that much. I think that it can be a medium to kind of do and say other things than just like what you would jerk off to in your bedroom and then like delete your browser history.
And do you think that the intimacy that can be found in your kind of porn, because it certainly is very different, it is like is it something that the rest of the industry is lacking?
I think intimacy is subjective to different people. So I think that, your intimacy and somebody else's intimacy might be different. And what someone wants to see in porn and what I want to see in porn might be different. And that's totally okay. So I wouldn't necessarily say that it's lacking. Maybe I was seeing a lack of porn that I thought was like really visually or conceptually interesting. And I do think that there's often like a little bit of a tendency in a lot of the more mainstream porn to kind of default to like a very like it's like a starkly lit set with like performers at middle distance, and you can see their whole bodies, like their face and their genitals, everything like all at once, and it's kind of instant gratification, which wasn't necessarily something that appealed to me. Like I quite like playing with what you're like not seeing, and it doesn't mean that it's not pornographic, because it definitely is. It just means that maybe it's like got a slower build up, and that's something that like I thought is interesting, because for me like imagination's like quite a big turn on, and I think sometimes leaving those gaps, like not giving a viewer like everything all at once, can sometimes mean that you play with like what you're not seeing and like what you're imagining, and it allows you to sort of like engage your mind a little bit more.
And do you think that people are now looking for things that are we had a conversation about how it seems that like people nowadays are looking for the next exciting thing, the next new thing that isn't just missionary and a pounding kind of thing, you know?
What porn are you watching with missionary? And I'm like,
well, I'll come on to that later, actually.
Yeah, I think the thing is that in a lot of porn that's made by kind of the traditional well-established companies, they're not making, they don't have big profit margins anymore. The profits in porn are really dwindling because there's not the kind of money in it that there once was. So I think the response to that has been to protect the only kind of consumer that they think that they can sell to, and that tends to be a very narrow bracket of the kind of people that actually do watch porn. So kind of like what the companies do is to try and keep that person like spending, is to like give them what they like but a little bit more extreme. So like more dicks, more holes, more people, more like kind of instantly kind of like attention grabbing acts, because that's what it's kind of chasing, your attention basically. And on tube sites it's chasing your clicks, and you're obviously going to be more likely, as we all know, to click on something that's sensational than you are going to be to maybe click on something that doesn't kind of do that instant attention grabbing thing. So I think the kind of prevalence to lean towards like more sensationalist kind of acts and positions and all this kind of thing is sometimes that's what people want to do sexually, and like that's fine too, but also sometimes just because it's like that instant attention grab.
Do you think that that porn does have a negative impact on younger viewers?
I think the difficulty is that young people, we don't talk about sex, so we don't have an open and honest kind of conversation about sex like we would do for other aspects of our lives. So I always use this analogy, but like we can have the kind of over the top and constructed fantasy that you have in something like The Fast and the Furious, because we know how to properly contextualize it, because we see examples of like everyday driving in our day-to-day lives. So we kind of know what good practice is, and we can enjoy the kind of fantasy of that. The problem is with porn is that because we don't talk about what good practice is, and we don't have access to like really good sex education to talk about consent and to talk about safety and this kind of thing, it means that we're not giving young people the tools to like properly contextualize the fantasy in the porn that they see.
So do you think it has the power to educate?
I think it has the power to educate. Like all media has the power to kind of open your eyes to different perspectives, different kind of looking at something from a perspective that you've not necessarily thought about before. Especially I think like for LGBT people, because a lot of the any kind of discussion that we do have in like our day-to-day lives about sex tends to be like really heteronormative, and so for a lot of LGBT people, finding like a like queer porn made for queer people can be really kind of like formative in like realizing that their like desires are normal, and that like they can have different sex from the kind of sex that we're told is the right kind of sex.
And also sex education, you seem to have quite strong views on.
Yeah, I mean, hey, I have strong views about so many things. Don't get me started on strong views about stuff. I feel like I'm someone that I like to be kind of thoughtful in like everything that I do, and I want to be thoughtful in every aspect of my life and my job and my porn making, because that helps me like be a better person. And like, so I think it's really important to like critique and ask questions about kind of like every aspect of your life, and also to have people ask questions of you, so that you can kind of continually improve yourself, I guess. And I think that that's maybe like what all porn needs to do, but also all other media as well. Like I think we just need to have we need to kind of come at everything from a point of view of respect, and especially like protection for the workers that have to exist with it. And but I think that there's room to be outspoken about this kind of stuff, and I think that's really important, because I'm somebody that has I have the privilege of being like an out sex worker. Like my whole family know what I do. This is my full-time job, but for a lot of porn performers, and especially porn performers who are more marginalized, they have to do other work, and often that's vanilla jobs, and often that means that they can't sort of get on a platform or like have their face in the paper like maybe I've been able to do, because for some people that could ruin their life still. And that's what's really sad, is that like I don't think my voice is most important when I'm talking about sex work politics, but for a lot of people, like they don't have the opportunity to kind of come here. So like I just want to sort of hopefully like support them in being able to kind of like speak as well, and like do my part as like best that I can to support people that don't have like my privileges. But I just want to make more space to like, so that people can kind of like be out about their sex work and not risk that kind of the repercussions that sort of like society brings when you start talking about like selling sexual services or like putting sex on film.
And so the policy around sex work in the UK at the moment, is it good enough?
Well, sex work and porn are a little bit different. So the policy on sex work is better than some places, but not good enough. Sex work, which is like selling full service sex work or prostitution, sex workers' rights activists would campaign for that to be completely decriminalized for the safety of the workers, and I would support that too. At the moment, I'm actually from Leeds, which is the first area of the UK to have a managed approach to sex work, which is an area of Leeds where clients are not going to be arrested for curb crawling, and there's like kind of resource bans, and people can kind of go in and it's monitored. And hopefully the kind of success of that and the way that means that sex workers can kind of like liaise with the police and report bad behavior without fear of persecution themselves. That's something that I would love to see like rolled out throughout the whole of the country. With porn, it's really difficult. There's a law that's under review at the moment called the Digital Economy Bill, which is looking to make it so that you have to show ID to watch porn in the UK. Now, initially that kind of sounds like, oh, obviously like you should be over 18 to watch porn, then that seems like a kind of good idea. Unfortunately, like as we know from if anyone's ever tried to go to an LGBT resource or like look at an art photographer on the internet at like an academic institution, porn blockers like massively overblock stuff too, which means that like LGBT resources are also compromised for young people. The second issue is an issue of like what that would require is me as a site owner to collect the data of all the people that are visiting me, and everyone knows that the more data you hold, the more risk that is of being hacked and exposed. And I think it's just like it's a massive privacy issue, and it's an issue for me as a small business owner, because the company that owns all of the porn companies fully supports this bill, because what it's decided to do is monetize it. So the company that owns all of the tube sites that you will watch porn and all of the biggest porn companies in America has decided to create an age verification software that it can then sell to people. So once this is in law, it will mean that I will then have to contribute even more to their pockets in order to continue to like run my site. I think we need to take a proactive approach as opposed to an approach which is like stick your head in the sand and hope that it goes away, because it's not going to.
Is sex education good enough in this country?
No. It sucks. Sex education is not good enough in this country at all. We don't talk about things like consent. We don't talk about things like porn. We don't talk about things like the kind of the difference between everyday sex and everyday sex protocols and the kind of sex that you might see in a porn film. You don't talk about the idea that like you have to do a lot of communication and negotiation in sex, because we kind of skirt over it, or we treat it biologically, or we treat it as like a don't get pregnant, here are all the STDs that you are definitely going to get if you have sex. And like Mean Girls, like you're gonna get pregnant and you're gonna get an STD and you're gonna die. I think that there's a long way to go, and I think a lot of the issues with the sex education that we don't have in schools, or even just at home, like we don't talk about sex with our parents or other people who generally kind of educate us about life. It means that there's like a lot of confusion and a lot of misinformation, and we're blaming the entertainment side of sex for what's lacking in the education side.
So obviously as well, this is the student media outlet.
Uh-huh.
So you did say yourself, and you're probably sick of hearing this question, you said yourself that you first got into sex work whilst you were a student.
Uh-huh.
Would you be able to talk us through that?
It wasn't really anything to do with being a student. It was just like a time in my life where I was I thought it would be interesting. Like for me initially, it wasn't like a monetary thing, although for a lot of students, because of the immense amount of debt that's like heaped on, I was going to say us. No, I've not been a student for a while. It means that people are turning to different ways in order to kind of subsidize that. And there's a lot of like scare quotes in the press of being like student sex workers. Unfortunately, an increase in sex work is also, synonymous with things like austerity and the fact that you now have to pay thousands and thousands of pounds to go to university. For me, it wasn't necessarily a financial thing. I just thought it would be interesting. And I think that's sometimes how people come to it. But for whichever way you're doing it, like, you deserve to have rights and you deserve to, like, work safely.
Like, you're out to your family as well about this, or like, how did you tell them? Like, what was their reaction?
I don't think anyone was really that surprised, to be honest. Like,
all the time spent alone in your room.
Well, no, it was like, I mean, I wasn't living with my family or anything. It's more like, I think I'm really lucky. I have, like, really great, really supportive parents who trust me to, like, make the decisions that are right for me. Telling them was pretty awkward, but, like, it was actually really nice. Like, they were really, it was funny. Like, I said, my mum, since the age of 11, has become a professional at stalking me on the internet. I kind of, like, said, like, Mum, I'm kind of doing this, and she said, oh, well, what a surprise. Well, I've prepared this list of questions for you. Like, so she obviously knew, and she'd kind of been waiting for me to kind of come to it in my own time. But yeah, I'm just really lucky, like, and not everyone has that, and that makes me really sad, because, like, my parents, like, supporting me in what I do is, like, really important to me, and the idea that that's not the case for some people kind of breaks my heart.